Welcome to the Card Central Postgame Show presented by Hot Shots. This is STL Sports Central. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray. The Cardinals dropped Game 3 against the Reds 4-1. And really, this was the most likely outcome in this game. The bullpen was depleted. Mikolas has had his struggles going deep into games. But I think the main takeaway isn't necessarily the bats going silent, but the starting pitchers on both sides doing their jobs. Mikolas allowed the Cardinals to just use 3 pitchers total. Andrew Abbott continues to impress as one of the best starters in the National League.
Man, Andrew Abbott has been really good. 7 innings, 1 run today, and that's no easy task, Stefan, getting through 7 with the heat and humidity that was happening at Busch Stadium in downtown St. Louis today. So impressive from him. The Cardinals certainly saw his best, and his ERA now drops to 1.79 for the season. So this isn't the only day that he's been pitching like that. But you're right. I think with what was called upon for Mikolas to do in this game, he did it. 5 innings, 2 earned runs, 3 total runs. Just gets away from you a little bit there as the Reds are able to score a couple of them off him in the 5th inning, a couple of doubles, and then really the pass ball that leads to a sacrifice fly. Otherwise, you're pretty satisfied, I think, with what Miles brought. And then the bullpen, 4 innings, 1 run. I think generally you'll take that too. Offense didn't get anything done, but they just didn't have any answer for Andrew Abbott was the bottom line in this one. And it felt kind of like when you get to the later innings of a game like that on a day like this, as much as the Cardinals are capable of coming from behind in those spots where it looks like you're dead in the water, heck, they just did it yesterday. This one, there was no such luck with the Reds able to throw a couple of good relievers at them. And, man, Pagan has been about as automatic as it gets recently. So that's kind of the way it goes. This is why they say that sweeps are hard, Stefan, and I guess that adage proved true for the Cardinals today.
Certainly true, and winning a game with just 3 hits is difficult. Chewy says, does hitting the ball just not exist today? Well, you didn't have your A lineup in. You didn't have your B lineup in. Joel Pozo had a good day at the plate. Mikolas did give the Cardinals a very good start. So the comments pouring in, all astute observations. But in the grand scheme, look at what they pulled off in games 1 and 2 of this series. You're happy they won the series. The Cubs right now losing. You might not lose any ground against Chicago. Be 4.5 back with a 4-game series at home. A big opportunity to really bring things close. I loved what the Cardinals did by and large. Now, one of the things that I will say is early in the game, they left a little bit of meat on the bone. Strictly talking about that 2nd inning when Joel Pozo poked the ball through to the right side, allowing Nolan Arenado to come home to score. He had runners 1st and 2nd with nobody out. That's another opportunity where you take the lead there against a pitcher that was definitely dealing with the elements and struggling at times. Who knows if this game changes a little bit?
Yeah, I think that would be probably your most disappointing spot. And you mentioned it, not necessarily your A lineup. They wanted to get as many righties in there as they could against the lefty Andrew Abbott. And I think that's why you get Jose Barrero in center field today. And he kind of, with the meek little pop out and Jordan Walker swinging strikeout, takes you from having those 2 runners on with nobody out to now you do get to turn it back over to the top of the lineup and Brenden Donovan, but you got 2 outs. You've got no margin for error at that point. And he hits one on a line, but TJ Friedel makes the play, and that's all she wrote for one of the very few threats the Cardinals had in the game. It felt like early that was a moment that, yeah, if you are able to maybe get a little bit more in that spot, you maybe not provide the knockout blow to Abbott because he's been so good, but yeah, getting him out of his element and getting him uncomfortable, those long innings, the Cardinals couldn't find a way to establish any of those real long innings against Abbott on a day like this. That was really what the doctor ordered, I think, if you wanted to get the sweep. But I will say so far, Stefan, I'm bracing myself, but I think a lot of Cardinals fans are pretty understanding of where things are right now. They saw the series win over the weekend. We're getting the comments in here, understanding that they faced a pitcher who's got really good numbers this season, and we're all kind of waiting because we know what's coming next. 4 games against the Chicago Cubs, Cardinals Cubs for the first time in 2025. These are the matchups, Stefan, that are going to decide the National League Central in many ways, and we haven't had any of them yet as we approach late June. So I'm kind of interested. I mean, the way the comments are flowing, sometimes a game like that, you might think people would be pretty upset, but I think mostly everybody goes, hey, good series win. You got the come from behind victory yesterday. Bring on the Cubs seems to be the sentiment from Cardinals fans. Let us know in the live chat right now, though, if that's how you're feeling after this 4-1 loss for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and you're going to see some of the starters that are in the middle of the rotation for the Cubs. You're going to see Ben Brown tomorrow. You will see probably Ray. You might see Shota Imanaga. This is an opportunity for the Cardinals where you aren't going to face the gauntlet of the starting pitching staff like Matthew Boyd, who has been one of the best pitchers in the National League. And being opportunists, the Cardinals have found a way to create their own energy. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this show and elsewhere. If you can't get up for this series, I don't know what you can get up for. If you're a fan of the Cardinals, you're a fan of this team, I don't care that it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday game or series. Go down to the ballpark and watch this team play, because we'll be pretty sure of what this Cardinals team is after they face the Cubs, at least in terms of where they are in this division. Now, you hope Liberatore can replicate some previous success that he's had early in the season and maybe not some of his recent struggles, but who knows how it's going to go. Both teams are going to be motivated.
100% on the motivation factor. And yeah, when I woke up this morning and did the Card Central 365 show, we hadn't gotten any probables from the Cubs for that series. It looks like Brown is their plan for Monday. I'm seeing Tyone for Tuesday, and then still some TBDs thereafter. And you did mention it. The Cubs are playing and in action right now, with the Mariners adding on a little bit in that matchup. So that's what you want to see if you're a Cardinal fan. That 9-6 score is now 12-6 Seattle. This is going to be that series, and I do think the Cardinals are going to be ready for it. You'd hate to think, Stefan, that there would be a little bit of an attitude of, all right, we got the series win, now we're kind of on to the next one if something doesn't break our way. Maybe you got a little bit of that from the Cardinals looking ahead. But like you said, the comment here from Jeremy, 2 earnings from Mikolas through 5, can't complain. I thought they were going to have a really interesting task on their hands when it came to sort of the bullpen management and how you get through 9 innings today, knowing that they've been pretty careful about Mikolas going a third time through the order, and it's basically feels like 105 degrees outside. So how are they going to figure that out with a beleaguered bullpen right now? They do make the roster move. I'm kind of curious for your thought on that, Stefan. People see Granillo going down, and they're thinking, oh, you got to be kidding me. He was the guy that had a save and a win in the same day. I mean, he's given the Cardinals some really good quality outings, but they're up against it right now. Still no off day coming. You had one technically this past week, but a doubleheader kind of cancels it out. They're just looking to try to get through this stretch, and was not surprised to see Graceffo get 2 innings today after the call-up. There could be more roster moves coming before the Cardinals-Cubs series kicks off tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by it at all. And I want to get back to this point, but first, let's make a note that this Card Central post-game show is brought to you by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray. And we talked about this last night. Chris Pelican and I discussed the Memphis Express is going to be used, especially in a game like today where you had no starting or no relief depth in your bullpen. And this was the right decision. Andre Granillo has been your best reliever since he's come up, but he's also been probably the guy that's been used the most. If you look at, he was pitched both games of the doubleheader and then pitched yesterday. This is a good decision to get Gordon Graceffo, who pitched well in the 8th and 9th. This is not saying we didn't like Andre Granillo's pitching. It's saying we need a fresh arm, and you'll probably see more of that. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Ryan Fernandez coming up, or someone of that copy or of that mold for St. Louis. You just want to make sure that you bring in your best relievers that you possibly can against the Cubs, because they can really hit. We know what that lineup can do. Yeah. And this question, why not send someone else than Granillo, a lot of worse pitchers? It was because he was the one that was used the most. Right. And he was a right-handed arm. You were taking a right-handed arm out, bring another right-handed arm in, and then you can swap them. So, and it gave you another look at Gordon Graceffo, who's been put in some tough situations this season.
Yeah, and would not be surprised if Graceffo ends up being kind of on a one-day stint here. In a lot of these situations, you might say, man, that would be a rough life. Come up, pitch a couple of good innings, and get sent right back. That's a possibility here, whether it's Fernandez, maybe a Matt Swanson, whatever the circumstance ends up being. The Cardinals are just looking to get through this stretch. They play the Cubs for 4, they go to Cleveland for 3, and then Pittsburgh for 3 until an off day finally arrives on July the 3rd. This Cubs series is important. The Cardinals know that this Cubs series is important, and so they want to have absolutely as much as they possibly can in terms of ammunition in the tank going into this series. And look, Graceffo was there to pitch a couple of innings today, but he also could have gone more if you didn't get the quality from Mikolas that you got. Imagine a hot day where he gets beat up a little bit early, and you've got to find a way to to cover 5 innings from the bullpen instead of just the 4. Graceffo could have been their length guy today, even more than what he showed. I think you got a pretty good outcome in terms of Leahy going a couple. I don't know if the Cardinals would go as far as to option Kyle Leahy, because then you'd be without him for a good 15 days, unless there's an injury that necessitates a call-up. So I'd be surprised by that, but it could end up being that Graceffo was a one-day mission at this point in time. But for guys like him, for guys like Granillo, as you start to think about the schedule lightening up in August, September, when those Thursday off days return almost every week for the Cardinals in those months, then you can start to say, here's the bullpen we want to build out with the guys that we have seen prove throughout the course of the year. They're the ones that need to be here. Right now, though, Stefan, I think you and I agree, and just kind of expanding upon the question there from Bill, it is a strict numbers game more than anything. When you throw 4 games in 5 days, which Graceffo did, 2 of which came in one singular day, I don't think they would have been able to use him until Tuesday, and that might even have been a little bit aggressive. So it's just the way that it goes. He pitched in 3 different innings yesterday, too. I mean, you obviously did the postgame yesterday and know that, but 7th, 8th, and then an out in the 9th, that's a signal that they were going to use everything he had in him and then say, you earned a rest, but the rest is unfortunately going to come in Memphis for the time being.
And it's the right decision. I think that as a reliever, you understand, unless you're the closer or a nails setup man, you're expendable. You're expendable. Not necessarily saying, hey, we're going to send you down for no reason,
right?
But you are a piece of the bullpen, and you got to keep a packed bag. You've got to live out of a packed bag, and they understand that. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the offense and some of the strides that were made for St. Louis. Lars Nootbaar looked a lot better at the plate in this series. He started to swing the bat much better, and it seems like he's more comfortable in that number 7 spot. Surprisingly, given all of his struggles, I missed that bat in the lineup today. A couple of opportunities where I think his skill set could have been used, especially his patience to maybe break up the streak of Andrew Abbott, who, how many did he sit down in a row? It was like 15 or 16.
At the team, I think they had 19. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And you needed a guy to maybe break that down a little bit, especially when the team was down by 2. A bloop and a blast, base runner and a blast, you're right back in it. So I'm excited to see what he does against the Cubs and what the Cardinals as a whole do. Getting Barrero in there was good. I don't know what he provides for you offensively. The Cardinals' depth off the bench, at least offensively, is not quite where I would like it to be at this point in time. And that's really a product of the fact that Ivan Herrera is injured.
Yeah, and we did get a comment that says, I miss Ivan Herrera. And that is probably the best comment anybody has made yet today. The Cardinals going through this stretch where they win 5 in a row, so it feels like, times are still going well. It's going to be a huge hole in this lineup that the Cardinals collectively have to figure out a way to fill. And you need not just like the power and the replacement of his production, but you need him from the right side as well, because he would have been a guy in this lineup that would have been in the top third today against a really tough lefty. You mentioned missing Nootbaar's skill set. That's valid. I think the reason that you choose to get him a day feels like Nootbaar is kind of on that plan that we saw for Jordan Walker for a while, where it was like, he's going to play a day, he's going to sit a day, work on some things, and try to get back to being himself. We're seeing Nootbaar kind of turn the corner a little bit, but I think it was just a day where they figured, tough lefty, don't let him backslide on some of the progress he's been making, get him a day. And you obviously understand that. I think, though, the biggest factor of this is Herrera, because it changes quite a bit about what the Cardinals are able to look like. And, man, I've been getting comments, what about Nathan Church? Can you call up a guy like him from AAA? Yeah, sure. He was 3 for 5 today for Memphis with a couple of runs scored. He's hitting .426 with an 1149 OPS at AAA. That's awesome. Guess what he is? Another left-handed bat. They just don't have that right-handed outfielder right now that can supplant what basically they have in Jose Barrero, because you're right. He doesn't bring a lot to the table offensively, and even defensively, I think at times we've seen him a little suspect, a little unsure of himself in center field. That they would be looking for a bat like that, Stefan, and they just organizationally, they don't have it this year. They certainly didn't have it last year. And as we kind of think about the way the roster has gone, that's why a Ryan Vilade type of thing happens like it did a couple of weeks ago, because they are desperate to try to find somebody that can be more productive in that role. Does there come a point where they just say, let the splits be darned and we're going to call up a guy, even if he's another lefty? Yeah, maybe, but it's not the ideal version of the puzzle that you put together for a roster.
Yeah, I agree with that point, especially when you see Ollie Marmol's tendencies. He likes to play the splits. He likes to play the numbers game on this. And having watched Nathan Church, he's a tremendous baseball player, and I hope he's an impact player for the Cardinals. But he's a similar mold to a lot of the other players on the field. And that's where he fits into a difficult situation. You look at a guy like Joshua Baez, that's a different story, but he's in Double-A. Need to see what he can do at Triple-A. And then you ask the question, right? Where are you going to play him? You want that guy to play every day, but you have Jordan Walker, who is sort of one of these players that you want to make sure is still headlining your organization. And this is a kind of exactly the comment that I'm sure a lot of fans think. Walker is a roller coaster. He's not ready for Major League Baseball. Needs to go back to AAA. Well, this year is for Jordan Walker, and he's not going to go back to AAA, barring anything crazy happening. But before we get to our next point, quick reminder that all content here on the STL Sports Central is provided by DraftKings. Baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. Get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All
right, welcome back to the Card Central Postgame Show. Brenden, Schaeffer, Stefan, Caray here. And again, we can talk all we want about the Cardinals this week against the Reds, this weekend, I should say. But I think the main focus has to be the Cubs, who are one of the best teams in the National League. They have depth at virtually every position. They have star players at most positions out of the 9. But the Cardinals have done well against those types of teams, against the teams like the Phillies, against the teams like the Mets the second time around, the Dodgers. I don't think this is going to faze them very much. And to get a start against Ben Brown, who has had his struggles, about a 5.5 ERA this season for Chicago, there might be a chance for Alec Burleson and the power-hitting left-handed bats to make a statement against the Cubs.
Yeah, I think going into a game like that as well, that you do want to be able to stack your lineup with the lefties to be able to oppose a starter that is right-handed, has had his fair share of troubled times this year, as the Mariners now lead 14-6 over the Cubs. So that's something else I'm looking at to see, have they had to dig too deep into their bullpen? It looks like they're just making Nate Pearson wear it right now. But that's good news for Cardinals fans, because you're going to get the Cubs dropping a game on the same day that you did and allow the status quo there in the 4.5 games back. So, yeah, I look at guys like Burleson. I look for Donovan. I look for Nootbaar. As you mentioned today, he missed his presence. Tomorrow he'll be back in there, and the Cardinals will try to load it up and be ready. Maybe even a guy like Nolan Gorman, who we've seen be very streaky. I won't say that he has just continued to have this sort of positive trajectory. There have been moments where we thought that was the case, and then he backslides a little bit. That's going to happen with guys. Even Wilson Contreras yesterday had a really rough day, and, those times are going to come for everybody. But I would look at Gorman and say, yeah, he's another guy that tomorrow, at least matchup-wise, you would say maybe you take your shot and have 5 lefties, if not more than that, in the starting lineup against Ben Brown.
Well, they have certainly stacked the lineups in terms of the opposing pitcher. And it feels like the type of night where Gorman could have a big night or Burleson could have a big night. This is a night where you don't want the Cardinals to get all their runs out of the way at once, but don't get too eager, right? The hallmark of this team is being disciplined, pitching well, pitching to contact, letting the defense make plays. You're not going to beat the Cubs at their game. You're not. You're not going to beat the Cubs by slugging. You're not going to beat the Cubs gap to gap. You're going to beat the Cubs by playing good baseball. And this is exactly right. Now focus on the Cubs. Goals should be to win every series, keep picking each other up. Wilson going through it, looking for a big series against the Cubs. Go Cardinals. I will want to focus on Wilson going through it as the main point of that. Well, guess who they're playing next, right? They're playing the Cubs, his former team, who he's certainly not been shy about talking about in his career with St. Louis.
Yep.
This is a perfect time for him to get back on track in a big way.
Yeah, and look, Wilson had a stretch in that doubleheader against the White Sox where he was 2 for 7 with 5 RBIs and a walk. He looked pretty good that day, and has an 0 for 9 against the Reds in the 2 games that he plays. It's going to happen, and you're going to have those little spurts throughout a season where it doesn't look right. I agree with you. Getting to face the Cubs is probably the best possible option and outcome for Wilson Contreras right now. He just seems to rise to the occasion in these types of moments, and he likes to talk his talk and then back it up. And I have used the phrase heart and soul. He's really the heart and soul for me in a lot of ways of this Cardinals team, and it would be lovely to see him manifest in that way over the next 4 days. You're going to need everybody, as the comments have mentioned. You'll need those starting pitchers to continue on a better trajectory. You're going to need the bats to certainly do more than they did today, but I think they ran into a tough one with Abbott, and if they got caught looking ahead a little bit and they're geared up and ready to go for the next 4 days, could have major implications on what the remainder of the NL Central race looks like. If you win 3 of 4, suddenly you're shaving games off of that deficit with the Cubs. If it goes the other way, I mean, that's an option here. You quickly might find yourself not as inside this race as you might want to be if you're the Cardinals. So it's going to be a lot of fun at Busch Stadium to see the way the next 4 days go.
It feels like that summer, what was it, back in 1998 when Sosa and McGuire were hitting those home runs. Maybe not quite the appeal, but a revitalization of this rivalry that I think we can agree hasn't quite had the same allure and appeal based on how the teams have been performing in recent memory. Now you have 2 good teams that are at the top of their divisions and duking it out in the middle of the summer heat in St. Louis. I mean, there's nothing better than that. To me, game 1 is the most important, though. You don't want to fall behind in this series, because after you lose game 1, you start thinking, okay, we've got to win 3 straight in order to win this series. You win game 1, you can afford to lose game 2 or game 3. As soon as you lose game 1,
it's tough.
In your mind, you're starting to think series split, and that's not the way that the Cardinals can afford to operate.
Right, because you're down 4.5 games. And look, you've got 13 opportunities with the Cubs this summer. That's great. I don't know what your take is on this. I don't like the balanced schedule. I'd rather than play more divisional games. Get that out of the way. But it's been a reality of our lives now for a couple of years. My take that I kind of disagree a little bit on is folks saying, I don't like it that the Cardinals and Cubs have not played until now. I don't really need to go to Wrigley in April. By late May, that's a beautiful place.
Right.
But I'm kind of about it that the Cardinals and Cubs are going to be playing this week. They're playing 4th of July weekend. They're playing in September, the last series of the season. Like, you're getting a lot of those potentially meaningful matchups. I know we're all trying to manifest the NL Central being on the line that last weekend at Wrigley. I mean, that's really what you're wanting to see, and time will tell if that can happen. I'm kind of cool with it, though. I'd rather it be backloaded than front-loaded when you're talking about Cardinals-Cubs, and now the weather is turned up, and so is this rivalry as well.
Yeah, you have less of an opportunity to control your own destiny, and for me, I don't want to see the Royals and the Cardinals playing a home-and-home every year.
I agree.
Let them play each other once a season, whether it's at Busch or at Kauffman, and give more divisional games more opportunities to gain ground within your division if you're St. Louis. But that's really all I have on this series against the Reds. 6:45 p.m. start time against the Cubs tomorrow. A 4-game series, the biggest series of the year by far. Brenden, Schaeffer, you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I see a lot of folks still talking about Nathan Church and mentioning that he's not on the 40-man, and that's accurate. There are 40-man spots to be had. I'm not going to name names, but I could find them for you if I was pressed into action to be able to maybe make a little bit of maneuvering happen. More than anything, though, I think the thing with Church and with anybody else you would call upon, it's that handedness, and that's why I don't think you're seeing it right now. People talk about, I saw a comment from Bill. Fermin has an OPS above 800. He's right-handed. Yeah, we've kind of seen him in action in St. Louis as well, and the bat has not necessarily translated. And I also think when you look at the comfort of, I'm sticking this guy in center field and it's not going to cost me a game, that's a hard thing for a Fermin who has just been more recently translated to an outfield role, just trying to find a way to get someone in this organization to fill out that bench with right-handed bats that can provide some pop. You'd say, well, Luken Baker hasn't really even been hitting in Memphis. So there is still a lack of that right-handed thunder off the bench, and it just grew a little bit shorter when you think about losing Ivan Herrera. Now, that could be a reason for Thomas Saggese to get some opportunities and maybe see what he is capable of. He's somebody that Cardinals fans have been clamoring for, and understandably so. Now's going to be his chance. He's going to have to make his mark, I think, as well, Stefan, when you think about the general roster construction and the loss of the loss of Ivan Herrera, with Saggese getting the first chance to fill that hole at the plate.
I totally agree with you. That's very well said, Brenden. And the Cardinals take 2 out of 3 against the Reds. They drop game number 3 today, 4-1 for everybody here at STL Sports Central. This has been the Card Central postgame show presented by Hot Shots. All content provided by DraftKings. The crowd is yours. Be sure to tune in. It's going to be a very fun week at Busch Stadium as the Cubs come to town for the first time in 2025. What a season it's been. Can't wait for what's next.